So the last time that I actually made a top 5 favorite figures ranking video was over a year ago, and completely out of left field, that video just launched up over 450,000 views. In that video, I got a ton of requests to do that, but for G1 styled figures. For those who are new here that don't really know the difference, Movieverse versus the G1 or Generation 1 or Generations designs are completely different. The Generation 1 from the 80s, the original designs that came out when Michael Bay came along and he decided to make the big Paramount movies, they completely changed the design to those characters. I personally have a deep love for both of them, and honestly, if you ask me, I'd choose one of the two. But generally, my previous video, go ahead and check it out. Now, unlike my last ranking video, I am going to be excluding third-party masterpiece style figures. And side note, guys, this is my opinion. In spot number 5, this was actually a really tough decision to make. And this pick is a little bit of a cheat. It's going to be a pair of shockwaves. So the first shockwave here is going to be the War for Cybertron Siege Leader Clash shockwave. The other one is a third-party figure from Planet X. It is basically War on Cybertron, War for Cybertron styled figure from the video games. And I know I promised that I wouldn't actually include Masterpiece of third party. I decided to cheat my own system and put him in here because he's not actually a Masterpiece style figure, nor does he scale well with Masterpiece figures. I actually have him displayed along with my War for Cybertron figures because he scales perfectly with them. And this figure looks so freaking cool, guys. He is just probably the coolest looking Shockwave I've ever seen. I decided to put the War for Cybertron Siege Shockwave in here as well because this figure got an unnecessary amount of hate when he was one of the first leader classes to drop in the WFC line, and I just loved him. He is technically just a Voyager figure packed with a lot of accessories, which went on to become a very regular thing in the Transformers lineup. But honestly, since day one, I've been saying that I am 100% willing to sacrifice the hollow, big, larger figures that we have in the leader class line for smaller figures that are much more well-made and come with a lot of accessories. This figure, to me, exemplifies a perfect version of that. Also, I don't care what anyone says, while the extensions look kind of goofy on his feet, those extra arms look freaking sweet on him. Even if we're ignoring those, I was perfectly willing to pay $50 for just the Voyager of this figure. He's absolutely awesome. But yeah, the Planet X figure, definitely a bit of the cooler between the two. He is just a bit of a cheat, so I put in the Siege version. Coming in number 4 is a figure that I genuinely never thought I'd ever see on my list when it was teased to come out a couple years ago, and it is Earthrise Optimus Prime. I just want to put a disclaimer out there right now that I think Earthrise is simply the greatest line we have ever gotten in Transformers Generations history. I mean, the War for Cybertron line as a whole is absolutely superb, but the Earthrise is the best of the trilogy, and this is the perfect example of that. There's a bit of a weird backstory to it, because before this figure came out, if you've been following Transformers, in the previous Siege line, they released the Siege Voyager Optimus Prime, which is basically a G1 Optimus with a bit of a Cybertronian twist for his alt mode. A lot of people really like this figure, including myself, but a lot of people also complained that he didn't just have a G1 alt mode and that he had this weird alternate truck. And I completely disagree. To this day, I think that is an awesome truck mode. So when they actually teased the Earthrise version of this figure just the following year, I wasn't that excited for him, and then I was even less excited when they showed him off at a local convention and had him physically on display, and his paint looked so much worse than it did in the actual reveal photos. And then I bought him, I got him in hand, and it is impossible not to fall in love with this thing. This figure is just so much fun. I don't know how else to explain it. His transformation is really clever, incredibly intuitive, and despite the fact that he has all the flaws that I thought he would have when I looked at him on that convention floor, he's just really great. As a matter of fact, my first impressions of him when I actually got him in hand was that his legs are too long, his torso is too short, and his chest comes out too far. But here he is, number 4 on my list. He is just an awesome figure. Number 3 on my list is another figure I genuinely don't think I ever expected to be on my top 5 figures, and it is the Netflix Walmart exclusive Volkswagen Deluxe Class Bumblebee. The main reason I ended up choosing this figure over the Earthrise Optimus Prime on this list is because this figure is virtually perfect, and I cannot say that about very many, if any, figures. There's no flaws with this guy. This figure is a remold from the Deluxe Class Cliff Jumper, which is a figure I really liked, but had a couple small flaws here and there as far as transformation. This guy fixes all of it. Not only that, but I adore his just super cute alt mode. The little Volkswagen is the coolest thing. Simply put, I don't think this is the best Bumblebee we've gotten in a Generations line. I think this is the best Bumblebee figure we've ever gotten in a Transformers line from Hasbro or Takara, ever, period. I think this guy genuinely looks better than either of the 2 Masterpiece figures that we got. For me, this guy is the flawless, unrivaled G1 Bumblebee. I'll be honest, number 2 on my list really isn't a surprise to me or anybody that knows my preferences of Transformers. It's gonna be the Studio Series 86 Leader Class Grimlock. I love Grimlock both in the movieverse and in the G1 verse. He has always just been my favorite Autobot. And frankly, we haven't gotten a ton of justice for him over the years. When they came out with his Power of the Primes Voyager class combiner Grimlock, I was really happy to get him because I just wanted a decent Grimlock. So considering I was happy with that figure, you can imagine how excited I was when they announced and revealed this guy. And he absolutely doesn't disappoint in hand. And the same thing I said about the Bumblebee figure, the same thing I'm gonna say about this figure. He is a virtually flawless figure. Everything in his design is exactly what I want. His robot mode, in my opinion, literally looks better than the actual G1 show. So while it's incredibly accurate, it looks so much more dominating and menacing. And a common issue that I have, that's kind of a specific common issue I have with G1 Grimlock figures, is they always have really bulky limbs and really thin thighs. And this guy absolutely nails it. His proportions are perfect in both modes. And that's not even mentioning his Dino mode, which is such a goofy mode. The transformation is really clever. It's the best Grimlock transformation I've ever seen. I've never owned the Masterpiece version of the figure, and I hear that the transformation takes a lot from that, but all I can say is I personally think this guy looks far cooler than even the Masterpiece. Are you seeing a theme here? You may be seeing why I didn't include Masterpiece figures. A lot of these figures are literally better looking than their actual Masterpiece counterparts. All right, let's do this. Let's talk about my number 1 pick. I've been collecting Transformers for over 14 years, so I've handled and purchased literally hundreds, if not thousands of them. And in my opinion, this figure is the single greatest Generations figure, and it'll have to be War for Cybertron Siege Titan class Omega Supreme. It was so impossible not to choose this guy. Not only is he one of the greatest Generations figures, in my opinion, he's the single best Titan class figure we've ever gotten since they started in 2014. I have almost no qualms with this guy. His transformation is fun. His city mode is by far the coolest looking city mode we've gotten out of any Titan class figure. One of the things, however, that's most important to me with modern day recreations of G1 characters isn't just being committed and loyal to that original design, it's improving on it in ways that we can. As much as I love these characters and these designs, we don't have to stick our heads in the dirt and pretend like these designs are genius anymore. In the modern day, those designs from the G1 show are cheesy. They're just not good. They don't hold up. But if we don't improve on some of those, we'll end up with some goofy looking figures. And this action figure is the perfect example of modernizing an old design in a very loyal way that looks so much better. It sounds weird to specifically point out, but one of the major things that makes him look so good is the actual proportions he has. Like, for example, he has a very small head, which is a part of what makes him feel like such a large figure. And that's something that figures like Scorponok, despite the fact that they are really good figures, don't look and feel as big as Omega Supreme, even though they're technically larger. It's because their head to body ratio is a little out of whack, in my opinion. This guy is the penultimate Autobot. I love him. He is in the front and center of my display. Honestly, at the end of the day, I just couldn't picture any figure that I loved and appreciated more than this guy in my collection. Before I wrap up this video, I want to have just 2 quick honorable mentions that I'll run through really quick. The first one is going to be the War for Cybertron Siege Starscream. This figure is incredible, and frankly, the only reason I didn't put him on my list is because I'm not the biggest Starscream fan. There are a few Transformers that are as satisfying to transform and handle as this guy is, and he looks fantastic in both modes. I don't care what anybody says, nothing about the Earthrise or Kingdom molds of Starscream are any bit better than this one. I, any day of the week, prefer the Tetrajet and the design of this Starscream. The last thing I'll mention for those who have stuck around is that you'll notice that I didn't have my HasLab Unicron anywhere on the list. It's not because I don't like him. As a matter of fact, he would have undoubtedly been the number 1 on my list, which is actually why I took him out. I wanted it to be a fair fight. It's kind of obvious that that'll be number 1. That's just a disclaimer. He is technically my all-time favorite Generations figure. So there we go. I finally did it. It's my top 5 favorite Generations figures. Again, guys, this is my opinion, so if this is flaring up the anger inside you and makes you want to put your fist through a wall, maybe see a doctor. Feel free to share your thoughts, however, in the comments, let me know what your top 5 favorite list would be, because everyone's going to be different. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. That's it for today. Later, guys.